So my next guest first came on my radar from a ZNN episode over the Z News Network. She was breaking the game down in very simple concepts, like making $25 a day, using P&L sheets to play Zed with her dad, breaking down the stable into her racing stable, her breeding stable, and kind of splitting it up so that way they both had their own horses that they manage, having weekly meetings, and a lot of the small details that I don't think enough people are taking advantage of when building out a successful business model and how to run their stable. So I was really excited to get the owner of Grayburn and King Ave Stables on, and I hope you guys enjoy. Here we have joining us Holly from several stables. Gray King, King Ave, and also Gray King Breeding. Grayburn Breeding. Mm-hmm. I have those a little mixed up. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, it's Grayburn, King Ave, and Gray King Breeding.
There we go. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you joining us. So you're joining us from the West Coast. I've been finding a lot more people on the west side of the country playing Zed Run.
Yeah, where are you?
I'm in Ohio.
Oh, nice.
So we're enjoying snow today.
Yeah.
So how did you first hear about Zed?
I actually read, I think, an article that had come out in the New York Times that was listing, I think it was kind of this piece about, how amazing it is that this horse had sold for a lot of money, and it was like digital horse. And I read through what it actually was, and I was like, I need to be part of this. This is like amazing.
Now I remember from hearing in your interview on ZNN that you kind of been like a gamer off and on for quite some time. So what's your favorite game then?
Oh gosh, it's been such a long time since I played stuff, but like I don't know if you ever played Masters of Orion.
I have not.
Or that and Heroes of Might and Magic. I played a lot when I was young.
Heroes of Might and Magic. Now you're talking my game.
Yeah, I loved that. I did a lot of SimCity. A lot of things with like, long-term strategy, building something, repairing things. I like systems. So, a lot of that kind of stuff is really fun and interesting to me. Like, and I did a lot of the old school, like, Doom and like Castle Wolfenstein when they first came out, and like shooters and stuff came out. So I've done a lot of different types of games, but I'm more interested now in kind of story and building something. And I like to get invested and hooked into something that you can continuously build and tweak, and that's not just like for the moment,
I understand. Well, you have close to 70 horses now, so I think you're definitely building something.
Which I'm happy I haven't sold a lot of them now that I understand the tax consequences.
Yeah, we won't dive too much into that, but it's definitely an interesting topic.
You don't want to scare everybody too soon in the year.
No, it's just one of those complicated things, right? Like when do you?
Yeah.
The big question is when do you have to report, right? Is it when it transfers to fiat? Is it when you do the actual sell of the horse? And there's no clear answers yet. I know myself and my tech strategists and professionals have ideas on how we're going to try to do it. But, we could be completely wrong and get a letter and saying, hey, this isn't right. So when we get answers, I'll definitely do an episode on that or bring on somebody way more expert in the field than myself.
It's necessary because you're right. It's super complicated. And like, everyone's not really reporting. Like all the other like companies need to be doing some of the reporting for us, or at least like putting things into a spreadsheet that we can use. Cause like, it's a lot of information to do yourself.
Especially when you're doing microtransactions of, $2 races, it adds up really quick.
Yeah.
Now
I'm kind of hoping that P&L will help with that, like that even what Know Your Horses is doing. If we can say, hey, look, like my racing dollars, I didn't actually make any money. Like, hopefully we can use that to justify it, but we'll see.
Now you have a partner in crime with the stables.
I do.
Who helps you run them?
So my dad plays with me. So I kind of got into Zed as a way to connect with him more. And he's on the East Coast, I'm on the West Coast. And he got me into games when I was young, and we've always played stuff together. And so this was a nice way for us to do this and kind of partner up and have something to chat about every day, and work on something together. So yeah, he's in his 70s, so it's kind of impressive that he was able to like stop, learn crypto, all of a sudden get wallets, do all this stuff. It's not a easy setup process, so I was pretty impressed with him on that.
Yeah, I think that's really probably Zed's highest barrier to entry, is
Yeah.
because in the simplest format it costs more, and in the cheapest format it's quite a few steps. It's pretty intimidating for somebody just trying to buy a horse and throw it on the track.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of little places things can go wrong too. And like, if you look at the Discord, you always see like people who are like, "Where's my money?"
Yeah, the Discord's the first place to go wrong.
Yeah, right. The rule number one, don't go to the Discord.
Rule number two, don't go to the Discord.
Yeah, rule number three, don't click on anything.
Yeah, no kidding. So it looks like lifetime, you guys are over 5,000 races
Wow.
between your three
That's
stables. What have you learned in 5,000 races?
uh that in an ever-moving field, you must be nimble.
You want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, I think strategy is obviously based on the horses you have. And if you're playing this game right, you're changing your horses out. You may start with something, you may upgrade to something else. And horses have obviously a lot of different skill sets that you're intent on discovering. And I think that over the course of time, we've realized it's good to have a variety of horses so that
Mm-hmm.
as the environment changes, you can pick and choose who you want to run. And half of the fun of the game is having at least a few that you can be running at a time, and enjoying, right, part of the game. You obviously want to see money at least not being lost in large amounts. If you're breaking even and having fun and learning, that's worth it. You're still gaining knowledge and experience. But you obviously have a goal, I think, if you're playing this game of making money. Otherwise, you wouldn't have spent so much money on fake horses. So you're hoping that, within this, that I think having different kinds of horses gives you flexibility now that we know we are still in beta, right? And there's so many changes that are going to still keep coming. But I like that Zed is listening to people and at least trying some of the things that people are passionate about. And sometimes they try something and it's a bad idea, you know?
Yeah.
And it's hard to think about an entire ecosystem shifting. Every single time you move one of these pieces, the whole thing shifts. Like the breeding minimums, like previous to this, were such a big problem. And now we're seeing, okay, hopefully there'll be some space opening up for this. But like you change one little thing and like the whole thing can collapse, you know? So I think I've learned to be nimble and try not to get depressed.
Now, with having such a big stable and the breeding minimum changes from where they were to where they were when they first came back out to where they moved them to, and then lowering them again, have you adjusted your breeding strategy, or did you see yourself decrease in the amount of breeding you were doing?
Definitely more targeted. So I think, as everybody says, when breeding opened up, it was definitely like buckshot, just like scattered and doing everything. And as we've gotten all a little bit better at it, and we're picking horses a little bit better, deciding where to spend your money, because I don't know about you guys, but like $250 on a possible lotto ticket is like still a lot of money to drop. And
Mm-hmm.
especially now that we're not able to sell horses for close to what we're paying to breed them. So I've definitely slowed my breeding strategy. I just bred a new horse this morning, Torrent. And that was after buying a horse that can hang in class one, and then finding a stud that has similar ability levels and trying to, spend my $250 wisely. Because I bought some sabos a little while ago and was like, okay, this is going to be cheaper to basically bring in sabo blood by owning it myself, but I
Mm-hmm.
still haven't really been breeding them to the point that I probably would like to, because it's still too expensive, you
Right.
know. So, I mean, that slowed the flow of horses, and unfortunately, we do need a steady flow of horses in to kind of keep momentum into the racing. So I'm hoping that these new changes will have me kind of do a little bit more breeding because I really slowed down to almost nothing for a while.
Yeah, it
How about
definitely
for
got
you?
challenging. Well, so it's weird. I actually had the opposite effect. I was super selective early, and
Uh-huh.
then the ecosystem started growing so fast, and so much more data was available that
Yeah.
it kind of became overwhelming. And and I'm weird with data. Like even if it's very clear as day, I still want to see if I can prove it wrong. So 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 I tried to do so, and I lost significantly, especially because I had two really good horses that I bred right in the exact same back to back. Um, One of them was very intentional, one of them was not, and sold them both pretty quickly after they showed a little bit of success. And so I was like, all right, well, yeah, I don't maybe necessarily have to do as much work, and that did not fare well for like the last 8 breeds I've done.
Yeah.
But
Isn't that the worst?
well, not only that, but like the risk of selling unraced almost flipped overnight when they first came out with stamina,
Yeah.
because you went from being able to well, what we were able to sell horses for unraced was absolutely ridiculous, and what we were able to sell
Yeah.
donkeys for was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
Um, so once the correction kind of came in from stamina, uh,
Hmm.
it definitely hurt because I wasn't expecting it to happen that fast. It was
Yeah.
literally almost overnight. The market
Yeah.
just fell out.
Yeah.
So I've changed quite a bit. Um, I'm still breeding all my Genesis mares,
Hmm.
and I've actually been picking up single digit Nakamotos and Zavos lately because
Hmm.
it's the easiest way I think to get that blood into the stable, and you don't have to pay the breeding premium because you already own the female. So I figure if
Right.
I'm going to make a Z15, Buterin exclusive off of a Z5 Nakamoto, it's probably on average going to be better than a Z20 exclusive or something that I'm bringing within my own stable.
Right. Right. You
So
get better choices. Yeah.
yeah, and the breeding minimums went down, but I think what we'll see is at the high end they're going to go back up. So I'm actually
Hmm.
looking at trying to breed my Genesis uterine mares with some Nakamotos and Zagos now. So that
Yeah.
way I have that lower Z uterine that I can start branching off of later. Because,
Yeah.
just like we saw before, it went from $78 to $600. And
Yeah.
then even in the beginning, they weren't listing them at floor. So I don't
Yeah.
think Nakamoto floor stays Nakamoto floor when it comes to breeding fees.
I think you're probably right about that. Yeah, it was 240 to breed a Sabo Legendary this morning. And but it's like 250 for a Genesis. So,
Yeah.
I mean, the difference between this like $10 difference, I still think they don't have enough of a difference between levels. Um, like
And
$10 is like,
that's the big debate, right? Like to me, it's one of two things. Either one, it's their way of trying to control us from not doing what we did with breeding when it first opened and kind of put constraint on the ecosystem. Because if they really made, crosses and pacers and even exclusives like $30 to breed, people are going to scratch that itch in that lottery ticket. And I think we'll have, 10,000 crosses and pacers in the ecosystem tomorrow because it's cheap enough to take that chance. And
right.
that's not good for the game either. And also, based on a lot of the research that like the XYZ guys are doing, we don't even know if exclusives and elites matter that much compared to a legendary, especially
Right.
depending on who the parents are. Because I know BG put out a lot of stuff stating that you can get, or it might have been CJ. I can't remember who says what anymore. But they were saying that the Z6 legendary Finnies can have higher base ability than the Z6 Genesis Finnies because it's a Nakamoto and a Finny mixed. So
Right.
potentially it's going to be a better breeder than the Genesis, anyways. So if
Right.
that's the case, does it have to be that big of a difference if it doesn't actually matter in the long term? I don't know.
Right. Right. The
So
only thing I'm worried about is that it takes a while for you to get the knowledge and the perception is that there's a difference. And even if the knowledge is not there, people are not going to make those choices. So you're going to have an exclusive Sabo just sitting in the breeding
Mm-hmm.
barn, never getting hit up. And so I think in order to hold horses that don't race, you have to have some benefit to them, like studying or something like that. Like there has to be that breedability has to be somewhere, like there has to be worth for the horses. Otherwise,
Right.
you're just junking too many horses and they're sitting around and not doing anything. And like very few people are going to hit those horses up, even if they should, right? Like, even if
Right.
the truth is they should, it doesn't mean that they will.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely challenging. And this is the monster that Zed has chosen to take it on. How do you balance an ecosystem in an environment where growth might be the worst thing that could happen to you? Because
Yeah, right.
like what happens to race generation and being able to get in races if we add an extra 5,000 users tomorrow?
Right,
The floor would look great, but would you ever even be able to get into a race?
right,
So,
right. And how
I,
much skill selection is there going to be if everything's scheduled, right? Like,
yeah, that's I'm I don't want mandatory scheduled races. I think both can exist and should exist,
yeah,
but
maybe
we
have a
have to
choice.
get to right. We just have to get to a point where there's enough users to make it worth it.
Yeah, right,
So,
exactly. I agree.
how have you and your father enjoyed the tournaments so far? This being the second one.
The first one was interesting because, like, midway through, I realized the rules changed and that they counted all your races and not just your distance funnel that you were going for. So that kind of like knocked out a few horses that I just had done other races in and was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, God damn it, now I'm not going to make it. So, and I don't think my dad realized that as well in midway. And I was like, what are you doing? So he didn't get any of his horses in the first time. He is probably he might get Half Moon Bay in this time.
Okay.
I think Half Moon Bay is 16 races in and is like 40 something points. So we'll see. Because
I can let you
14
know.
more races is a way to go.
Yeah.
I think let's see where he is.
Um. Now, do you have any of your horses trying to qualify, or are you just kind of doing your thing?
I'm hanging. I might do one or two. I might do the one I just bred if it ends up being any good. I
Okay.
decided to breed a 10 rather than a 9, so I'd start off at 17 rather than 37. So that way I'd have a little bit more room to kind of go up if it ends up being a good horse. So I might do that because I got a little bit lazy and just didn't want to bring all my horses down. And in the current setup, if you don't take the time to bring your horses down, you're just if you have horses that have, they're all of their skills in 3, you're eventually going to do well and then just tank once you get to the higher levels, depending
Yeah.
on the horses that you're using. So you really have to do prep work, of which I just didn't feel like spending the money and time to do.
It's costly. I spent point 0.1 bringing 2 horses down from class 2. So it's
Yeah,
definitely
I
expensive.
mean, yeah. And
$400 or
thank
so
God, yeah, that's not a small amount of money to then potentially make $400.
in a one and out race.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So we'll see how it goes.
I mean,
Half
I got
Moon.
lucky with Savage Blood with the last tournament, because Savage Blood's U-shaped, so I was able to run all different kinds of races and still get points down. So I don't
Hmm.
even know that Savage Blood would do well in this setup because right now all of the cheap races are filled with just really accomplished horses.
Yeah, it's funny how tournaments change the racing ecosystem because you'll have
Yeah.
some really strong horses that have huge profits running in freeze, and then you'll have these horses that seem really strong that you have no idea where they came from coming out of the woodworks and
Yeah.
grinding out races that used to be safe.
Yes, there's no real safe place in a tournament because they're trying to manage multiple things and people are running a lot of different horses to see how they do. I mean, it is just not, I don't agree with the whole no classing down with free races for this reason, because you can't actually, I know that they want to limit the really big, accomplished horses, but you can't do that without penalizing the smaller people.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're all using the same tool set, right? So if you take a tool like that away from everybody, then you're really preventing the horses that would do well in class 3 to 5 from doing well. Like, I think
Yeah.
we're just going to end up seeing all ones and twos, or you're going to have everybody up in one altogether, like, and not able to get down.
Yeah, I'm happy I'm not the people at Zed trying to design these things, because it always seems like it's
It's
such a simple
hard.
fix, but I doubt it is. Like, I can't imagine
No,
10,000 stables racing with how many ever horses they're putting in and
yeah.
figuring out how to balance that. It's not simple. But Half Moon Bay is currently sitting at 16 races and is ranked number 67 in the sprinter category after 15. So I think you guys are going to be safe.
Yeah, that would be nice. Let's see how that goes. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed, because he's worked really hard, so I'd love for him to get in.
Hard enough to beat me this morning. So I was kind of going over your stable's profit and loss, and
Mhm.
I saw some interesting things.
Which one are you looking at?
I kind of went across all three,
Sure.
and the primary racing stable, it looks like the first 700 races or so, you guys were almost down negative half of Ethereum. So
That
it
was
looks
when
like
we
that
were
was the
running,
trial and error period.
yes, that was when we were running Pony McPonyface and
Hmm.
Kickstart My Heart and a bunch of our original horses. And I had to have like 4 conversations with my dad to please stop racing certain horses, and then he like wouldn't listen to me and keep doing it because he loved it so much. And I think he just like he felt like if he just kept going, and I said, you're just taking our money and you're throwing it into a ground and burning it.
Well, the good news is, since that dip, you guys are actually up um, like 0.3 and a half. So you've
Mhm.
recouped the majority of that. So that's pretty impressive,
Yeah, I
especially
think he's
such
at
a quick grind.
negative 0.12 or something like that now.
Yeah.
So he's pretty close.
Now, with the stamina changes, and gaining that much profit over 3,000 races, um, I'm assuming having the restriction on how many races you guys could run in days, not the best thing for your stable.
Well, I
Or does
mean,
that
I
keep
think
dad on a
that
shorter leash?
you make a good point. Yeah, I mean, he has a limit of time anyway. I mean, he's running like on if when things are good, he's running 6 or 7, 8 horses sometimes. So he's got a limit on how much time he just wants to spend. When there were 3 races per horse at a time, it was a lot easier to put in a good chunk of races, or even just to have different racing sessions. So I
Mm-hmm.
think now when you have one horse in each race, he's probably spending more time getting those, 6, 7 races per horse. And I don't know about you, but like some of my horses, um, we really have to like run them a good 7. Like they have to get their first good races in the distances we want to do well with. And if we're trying to bring them down, they're not going to come down if I'm only running them 2 or 3
Yeah.
races. So they won't balance out because they have to be fatigued a little bit before they really start, getting the rest of their U shape. Not every horse is like that, but I have found that, like Sprightly sometimes pisses me off because I only have time to do a few races, and I'm like, God damn it, you're supposed to go down, and the horse just refuses. Like,
Yeah.
even though he has the ability to, I just have to run him like 7 to get those 11s and 12s when it mattered to get 11s and 12s. So it's a little bit more flexibility now that we have points down for 7. So I'm appreciative at least about that. Um, but I think with the stamina update, we definitely had to pivot and shift with things. But our profitability like was really good before that, and then I think it tanked a little bit right when that happened, and we had to kind of recoup.
Yeah, it
Every
looks like
single
a
time
small
we're
dip.
on a roll. It wasn't too bad of a dip. Yeah. Yeah.
It's good that you guys are able to adapt, though.
Not without complaining.
Of course not. Of course not. Now, with as much as you enjoy playing Zed with your dad, if the whole play to earn thing went away completely tomorrow and it was just a regular video game, do you think it's something you guys would still do together?
Probably. Yeah, probably. Because I think, he's really into just those little tweaks. So right now he's like, ooh, we're at 440 wins for King Ave. And he's like, I think really excited to hit 500 soon. So those little measurements are kind of fun for him, an accomplishment. And um, I mean, it's a lot of time to invest. So I think if you're not getting a dopamine rush from the game, you're not obviously going to continue to invest your time. And so you either get that rush from achievements in hitting certain numbers of wins or certain kinds of races or playing with your friends. Like if you have a good group of friends and you guys are all racing together. So I think party mode is going to be probably really helpful for that, to have sort of like the fun and excitement of doing it with people. So I think we would still play even if it wasn't for money, but definitely in the absence of those other things, like money is the biggest dopamine rush.
Right. Now, do your kids play Zed?
They like to watch, but usually
Okay.
they're more resentful when I'm doing it and not paying attention to them.
That's fair. That's fair. And then the husband doesn't have anything to do with it either.
He did at first, but then he slowly realized that this game is literally exactly what he does for work, which is finding undervalued assets in real estate and then renovating them, flipping them, selling them. And so he was like, I can't have like a hobby that is exactly what I do all day. It's like too similar, you know?
I can understand that.
Yeah, you have to have like some other thing. So now he's just hitting tons of golf balls outside for de-stressing.
It's fair.
Golf is
Now,
his thing right now.
do you still talk to him about the horses and what's going on with the stable, or do you guys kind of keep it completely separate?
Yeah, no, he's interested. Like, I just picked up a really good horse recently, Fast Enough for You, at like a really incredible price for what the horse is and just historical prices. So I'll share things like that with him, and he's like, "Why are you staying up all night?" And I'm like, "I found this thing." Ah! He's like, "Go to bed," and I'm like, "No."
Yeah, that's
So
kind of how
I'll
it is
share
here.
those.
My wife, she doesn't do
Really?
anything with them, but if I stop talking about horses for like 4 days, she's like, "So what's going on?" I'm like, "Nah, I was trying to give you a break." She's like, "No, you can tell me." Then I get all
Oh,
excited and I
that's
don't shut
nice.
up for a couple hours. So,
Same, same.
if you had to guess, how much time are you putting in every weekend to Zed run?
I've tried to slow down a little bit. I would
Yeah.
say like originally way too much. The learning curve obviously takes like so much time, but then there was periods of time where I was spending hours on my free days off, like 6, 7 hours or something like that. And it's just like my husband's like, "What are you doing? You made $25 today. Like, go do something productive with your life." It's like that's like one patient for me. I make $75. It's a half an hour of time. It's like, okay, like maybe you should go do that instead of spending your entire day like on this like $25 profit. But it's not just about the money, right? Like
Yeah.
we would do it otherwise. So now I'm trying to be more reasonable, like a few hours here and there, like maybe 2 or 3 days a week. And I'm taking for a few days off. I'll try to like hang and chat with people on Twitter and stuff, but I'm not racing every day. My dad races every single day, but I just don't have that kind of free time.
I gotcha.
What about you?
I used to, well, I thought I used to spend a lot more, but people keep on building out new tools and the
Yeah,
theories start getting more sound. So I feel like every time a new tool comes out, it's another 10-hour,
yeah,
dump of time trying to learn it, trying to understand it, see if it matches up with what I believed. Because that runs kind of hard. I'm normally somebody who looks at the data and then looks for the areas that the data is not talking about, and then that's where I go investigate, and that's where I've had a lot of success, in my work life and personal life. But with the ecosystem constantly changing, it's really hard sometimes to isolate. Is it the field stronger? Is it people are getting better at managing their horses? Or was the data wrong all along? And I think what we've probably seen most with the Stack Nax tools extension and the Know Your Horse extension was not only did everybody get a lot better at running their horses, but they got a lot better at class management.
yeah,
Because I know, before Flames, I was running my horse Camille at 1,200 meters primarily. And at 1,200 meters, she can stay in class 5 because she'll lose a lot.
Right.
but she pretty much first or 12ths on her own. But then she would have a much higher profitability at 1,000, but she might win 3 or 4 in a row, and now she's in class 4, and
Right.
we don't know what's going to happen. So before, she'd go to class 4, and then she would get a lot of 6ths, and
Hmm.
that wasn't beneficial at all. So it's kind of one of those things where I think the education of everybody got a lot better, and then that makes it hard to decide. Was it the horse that was? Is it behaving differently, or is it the users behaving differently?
Right.
Because the human's ability to select what we're doing completely changes everything. It's so weird
Right.
to kind of analyze a horse and be like, well, did they run it wrong, or is it just not as good as it looks?
Right.
So I'm terrible at identifying talent. So I'm not that person to kind of sift through all the horses on Haku and find an underwhelming horse that's actually a monster and turn it around. I've
Yeah.
tried twice and failed miserably. So I'm going to stick to reaching out to other people and have them tell me what are good horses, and then I'll buy from there
Yeah.
until I figure it out, because that's just something I can't figure out.
Yeah, I do that a lot. I do actually. That's like I don't go shopping that much for purses online. I go shopping for undervalued horses, and that is like super fun for me. But we have so many good like people to use as resources. Like I'll be chatting with MJ or something and telling him what I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking for. He's like, "Oh, go look at this horse," and like he found me Demon Special with like with some of the tools that he's been looking at for breeding and stuff, and finding horses that have been bred. And so it's amazing that we have like these people who are just like so willing to share their information. And like like Danchan, you'll tweet something and Danchan will be like, go breed with this horse.
Yeah.
Like it's so sweet.
Yeah, that's the one thing that really surprised me about the NFT space was how open everyone's been, especially in the Zed Run community. Discord looks
Yeah.
like a dumpster fire, but
Yeah.
I've never been turned down from a big stable who I was able to connect with. It didn't matter
Yeah.
how big they were, didn't matter how busy they were. They always made time to at least acknowledge me if I reached out and have a
Yeah.
conversation. So that's always been nice.
Yeah, it's been really positive for the most part. I kind of took a little bit of a hiatus right now because it got slightly negative for a minute. I think with F going up and the environment changing, there's always like a little bit of a period of sort of discomfort where everybody's getting used to it. And so I kind of took a little bit of a break for a hot minute. I'm hoping that it stays as positive as it has been because the energy was so good for so long. And I feel like there's a little bit of discontent in the wind.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing that?
I am. I think it's the NFT space as a whole.
Yeah.
Um, I hate to say it, but I think there's a lot of people who got really lucky in crypto and NFT, and it might have what's the word I'm looking for? It might have put them into an area that they're unused to being in, with
Yeah.
status and money and um, some life choices that they're able to make that they weren't previously.
Yeah.
And I think during a down market, that exposes their ignorance and shows how lucky they got, and that causes a lot of the frustrations. Because from what I've seen, a lot of the bigger stables that I normally would reach out to for advice, they're still buying horses every single week. They're still running horses every single week. They're not really complaining about the changes because they knew changes were coming and they kind of expected it. So I
Yeah.
think managing expectations is probably the key if you're going to be in anything crypto related, especially a
Yeah.
game that you're trying to make money with. Um,
Yeah.
so, because
Yeah.
I've run
Especially that's
businesses
in beta,
before.
right?
Well, and that's the thing. Everyone's so mad that it's in beta, but at least we get to play through beta. Like normally,
Yeah.
the game develops for 3 to 5 years, then it goes to beta for 6 months to a year, and then you're able to play it. Like they could have easily, well, probably wouldn't have been able to afford to build out the game like it is now, but most games you don't get to see in year 4 or 5. You have to wait, 7, 8, 9, 10. So
Yeah.
I came in expecting challenges.
Well, that's good. I think you have a good mindset about it.
Yeah, I tried to. Now, do any of your friends play Zed?
No, none of my IRL friends do. So
Do they
I've
know
just
you play
new
Zed?
friends. Yes, and everyone
Okay.
thinks I'm completely insane.
Has it driven a wedge or anything with your relationships? Have you seen it change at all?
No. No, I
No?
mean they always have known I'm nuts, so I mean that's not new information. I think it's just like, okay, this is your new way to be nuts.
Well, that's good.
But yeah, one of my best friends is sort of like I can't even tell him how much money I spend on horses because he would probably disown me.
Right.
So I just say ETH, that way
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like, or F, just that that way he doesn't understand what it means. How about for you?
Um, I don't really talk to that many people in real life because I normally either stay too busy or it's hard to find people who have my same kind of weird. So that's been one of the nice things about getting into Zed is there's more people that seem to be more like me.
Yeah,
So, but every time I don't talk about it once again, they're always asking because in the beginning that's all I talked about. And
yeah.
even coworkers are like, "You run this week?" I'm like, "Yep." It's like, "How you doing?" I'm like, it's a down week. Let's not talk about it. Ask me again next week." But it's been a fun experience.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, what's it been kind of being a woman in the NFT space? Because I know, like, you're one of the few who probably don't use a profile pic from an NFT, so
Yep.
you probably don't get categorized as much as a guy, I would hope.
No,
Um,
not as much. I kind of did that on purpose because I was over it. Because every single time I got a DM, it was like, "Hey, bro," like, "Hey, this," like, "All right, thanks, dude," So eventually,
yeah,
I was just sort of like, "I'm just putting my face up there, and I just don't want to answer any questions."
right. Now,
Yeah.
do you
So
feel like you're treated differently in the space, or do you think it's pretty fair across the board?
not in the space I hang in. So I would say
Okay.
across Twitter. I'm in Twitter for a reason. When I was in Discord, yeah, I felt like I was treated as not serious, like not a serious player, maybe.
Hmm.
Not by anyone in particular, but just sort of like the feel of it. Like it just didn't, I don't know, it just didn't feel as open and accepting. So I would have to say the Twitter community for sure. Like, and amongst my peeps that I like talk to, like everyone's been so cool. And MJ and Golden Glow, like they really took the time to have us on, like, have glue on a knife for just basically to highlight more women, which I thought was really cool of them because we are fewer in the group, but everyone's been really nice in my experience, at least on Twitter.
That's good to hear. Yeah, it's definitely something I'm going to try for is making sure that there's everyone's included. Because something that I've always struggled with, and I'm sure on Zedrun it's going to be the same way, is finding people who are similar to me, not necessarily by looks, but by thought process and things we enjoy. And for Zed, like I first really saw it. My first video I saw was Zed Chateau, but then I
Hmm.
learned from Poseidon. But I also knew that there was no way I was coming into a state of the game in July and buying a Z1 Nakamoto.
Right.
So I think it's important to find stables like yours that started from what you started from and grew to 60 horses already. Um,
Yeah.
Whether all those horses are good or not doesn't matter.
They
That's
are
your
not
stable's
all
journey,
good.
right?
Yeah. I have not done the pruning that most people did. And like I said, I'm a little happy that I didn't do that because tax consequences for some of those might have been more annoying.
Yeah,
If I hold it for a year and then sell off some of those, maybe the environment won't really, no one will buy them anyway. But I figured, okay, so we'll just hold them for now. But yeah, like we started off with really very small, and I like to start kind of ground level with something and really get my knowledge base before I start making big, expensive decisions. We've never spent more than an F on a horse, I think, out of all the horses we got, and we probably should have at various points, but I just didn't have the knowledge to do that wisely, and I wasn't about to go throwing around money for no reason without, having. So now I finally have the knowledge. If I wanted to buy a horse that's 1.5F, that maybe I decided it wasn't really worth it in this
hmm,
state of the game. It takes a long time to make that money back, and you have to think about long term, like how long do you want to run a horse? What's the situation? I mean, they just arbitrage sold LBJ Go, right? Like that horse is incredible.
yeah, but then he turned around and bought four more immediately.
Yeah, but they sold that horse because in this moment of the game,
Yeah,
the trajectory that horse had would not continue.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
What was is there any key things you learned or turning points you think that once you figured this out, your stable started turning around or you started having more success?
Yeah, I think evaluating breeding ability of horses and the ability to find horses that are a higher potential to have a good foal, I think has really been one of the things that's been most helpful. So not every, sometimes I'll take a chance on a new horse. Like I just bought this horse, Pepe Le Hoof,
Oh boy.
which is actually a great horse. Like I'm super interested and I'm going to run him some, even just in some free races soon to just kind of get a feel for him. But he not a great breeder, like bred him with a few of our horses that we've done well with breeding with others and isn't. So sometimes I'll just take a gamble on somebody just for fun, for that part of the fun if it's not super expensive. But I think I definitely have found my decisions are having better outcomes the more that I learn and how to evaluate breeding ability. So that's probably been the biggest change.
Is
You're
there
going to
anything?
strike out, with that, even in knowing what, even if you do have more knowledge, like just because it's a game of chance, also, you're going to strike out
Yeah.
sometimes. So you can't let that dissuade you. But like when you look at the course of many decisions rather than one decision, you should be seeing a trend if you are correct.
And that's the hard part too. Like breeding's only been open for 4 or 5 breeding cycles if you count the forced reset when they first released it. So
Right.
like if you can take your percentage from having 2 profitable racers a year over one over the course of 12 breeds from your mare, like that's going to change your trajectory a lot. And if you can increase that to 4 successes over 2, like baseball players make $10 million a year if they swing and miss 7 times out of 10. So
Yeah.
I think people should not be so hard on themselves when it doesn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah, because you can have a good pairing and you can do breed the same horses multiple times and you just are going to see slightly different outcomes. And what you're looking for is a higher likelihood of success, not 100% success. You're just
Right.
very rarely going to find 100% success, when it comes to that. So it sucks because sometimes you'll do a breed and you'll get a bad one that first one and you'll give up on that pairing because you think, okay, it's like didn't bear fruit this time. But like how many times should we really be doing each breeding pairing to really get a feel for that?
Yeah, it's hard to say, especially because we don't know. The evidence has shown that there might not be a breeding algorithm, which changes all
Oh, really?
potential. That's what the some of the data has been showing. Yeah, but I
Interesting.
think because of the human selection aspect and the horses being so different, I don't know if we can say yay or nay. But they're definitely
Yeah.
saying that there is evidence that there is, but they also acknowledge that that doesn't mean that it's an absolute. And as we've seen with racing, maybe they just have it turned off, and maybe they'll flick a switch and turn it on. We don't know what's going to
Yeah.
happen.
I visualize it almost like a slot machine where you have multiple spinning dials, right? And that
Mm-hmm.
in order to have a horse that you have many different characteristics. Some characteristics may be kind of locked in with the ability part from the parents. It looked to me like when I looked at pairings over the course of time, when Haku was doing mean speed,
Mm-hmm.
that what you would see over the course of each breed is that the mean speeds would almost never go up. So in every single breed down, mean speeds would decline, but a lot of good horses had mean speeds in the 80s, 70s, things like that. And every single time, if you bred in a bad horse with it could tank to 35 or 50. But if you bred a good horse with it, it was staying. You had at least some distances that were staying in that 60 to 80 range.
Yeah.
So that showed me that there's a decline in performance that you is consistent that you can see, and that if you bring in good parents, you could rev it back up, but it would
Yeah.
never be higher than either of those two parents' abilities. So
Yeah.
the numbers wouldn't go up, they would only go down. So I definitely think that it's not random. I think that you have this like slot machine, like or this like, various dials that are turning, and some of them are locked. And then a few of them are on random, which is going to be your distance preference and, your variance. So that part is where you're really getting like the randomness, I think.
And the frustrating horses that like to win their down button and
Yeah.
lose their come in 12th with flames.
Yeah, seriously. That happened to
Um,
me actually. Torrent got flames and came in 12th.
well, that's a good sign, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So that's exciting.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything that you had to abandon that you believed early on?
I've had to disabuse my father of gait preference many times over, and he still, I don't think he still believes me. I was trying to explain to him that if you run a bunch of races and you have a variation in your performances, it's going to look like some gates matter just based on variability of data. But he just like didn't believe me for the longest time.
Yeah,
So that's something.
it's there's so this morning, somebody reviewed the new terms and conditions,
Hmm.
and they found a section that actually listed gate preference as one of the things that makes it run a skill-based game, because you have to
Right.
acknowledge your horse's gate preference. So now the tin hat theory is gate preference has been around the entire time, and they just didn't even know their own game.
Well, I know
So
that they mentioned it from early on. I bet you
yeah,
that they're putting that in there as a caveat so that if they ever decide to turn it on, it's already there. But because it's programmed into the horses, it's just not turned on. It
yeah,
exists within the game, and so they can use it for their argument.
yeah. I try not to get into it on the Twitter anymore. Some days it feels like Discord.
Yeah, right. But I saw that this morning as well. I saw what you saw.
Yeah. Now, is there anything you're really looking forward to instead?
Yeah, I think party mode and I think the ways to just interact with your friends more, I think will be really fun. I am interested in race scheduling because like there's definitely some days that I don't have time to sit here and stare at the screen and be like for hours.
Yeah.
So that part will be fun because there's some horses I just want to try at different things and I just don't have the time to do it, so it just doesn't get done. So that'll be nice. I don't know. What about you? What are you interested in?
Um, I'm interested in party mode
Yeah.
just because it'll allow for custom tournaments and not
Right.
having to run against horses that aren't part of the tournament, because it seems like, who's all in the field changes things quite a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but at the same time, I think when party mode first comes out, it's going to break the game pretty bad.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, just because if you take 2,000 horses out of the ecosystem and they're running private races, like what does that do to paid racing? How long does it
Right.
take for a race to fill?
Right.
Um, so that's probably the thing I'm looking forward to most. Um, but we'll kind of see how the game develops. I also want to see some sort of horse renting, because I think that's where we find value in a lot of the horses that we don't run. Because if
Yeah.
you compare party mode and horse renting, then you don't have to worry about how bad your horse is, because you get to create the rules that you're running in. So you can just get a donkey race together with fun names and race with your
Right.
friends, and you don't have to worry about turning a profit.
Right.
And I think that the clear path to just playing the game as a game can kind of give the people who want to do that, the ability to do so without losing money. Because right now
Yeah.
there's no way to play for free, and I
Right.
think that takes away a lot of the enjoyment for people. Because there's days I want to race, but I don't want to lose 10, 30, $40 to do it, and I would
Right.
run a horse that I don't really, care about the profitability in free
Right.
races if they were available. So
Right.
I kind
Yeah,
of go
I
back
agree.
forth.
Yeah, definitely. We want more flexibility and we want it to be an easier environment because what we keep end up seeing is attrition, right? Like we keep
Mm-hmm.
end up seeing a flush environment and then horses that were not doing that well aren't staying in the game and they're dropping off. And so every time you get a surge, you get a drop off and then only the good horses are staying, which means the field becomes more competitive. So we had 3 or 4 rounds of this the competitive field increasing to the point where the only people who've decided it's worth playing are those who are sure they're going to make money.
Yeah,
And that becomes a problem for the health of the ecosystem, right? Unfortunately,
yeah,
it's slightly like a Ponzi scheme. You slightly need to have like all this new money coming in order to if it's all about money, right? To
right.
prop up everybody else. And you need a flow of new people to do that, but we have to make it worthwhile for those people to stay.
Yeah, and I don't think every horse should be able to run and make money. I definitely don't think
Right.
that's the case. But at the same time, if we don't have new users coming in at a steady flow to keep up with demand, which I think at some point we definitely will,
Yeah,
um, it just kind of makes it, like you said, kind of stagnant. And, the top horses still are able to run, but they're not making as much money.
right.
And that becomes complicated too, because how do you justify a $40,000 investment in Nakamoto that went from being a 16 to 20-month payoff with just breeding to now it
Right,
might take you, 3-4 years if it's not a strong racer. Um,
right.
so I don't know. Like I said, I'm happy I'm not part of the Z team having to make these big decisions because I don't think there's a lot of it's this bad decision with these consequences and then this bad decision
Yeah.
with these consequences. Which ones do we want to live with today?
Yeah. It is not an easy job. Anyone who thinks that it is not paying attention.
Now, how do you feel about all the big sponsorships they've been acquiring? Because I know there's a lot of back and forth in the community. They're focusing too much on sponsorships and not worrying about the game itself. But how do you feel about all this coming in?
I think it's necessary now for the environment. Like they need to get the word out. It can't, if we really want to have success in the long term, we need to be attracting people. And so all of these different partnerships are going to just bring new eyes on the game. And so I think it's not the only thing that's important. And yes, like you shouldn't go out if your whole house is a mess, like, and you're trying to get people to come to your house, who cares what you go wear outside and make it look flashy if they come back and it's a mess? They're not going to want to stay. So, like, you have to have both, right? Like, you have to have an environment that keeps people, but then you have to be attracting people. So I think it's necessary. Um, but I definitely think everyone needs to be happy first, you know?
Right.
Well, can everyone be happy playing Zed? That is a larger question. Like,
Much larger question.
yeah. But I think that, obviously, like, race generation needs to be good. Like, we can't be in an environment that feels stagnant and then asking everybody to come and nothing's going on, you know?
Right. If you could own any horse in the game, what horse would you like to own?
Princess of Power. Just for her name, even. Like,
Yeah.
not only is it the most amazing horse, but like just the name of the horse is so fun. There's certain horses you just want to race. I really wanted
Yeah.
to buy this horse Wraith before, and I ended up not being able to afford it at the time. But I was like, I just want to race Wraith. Just sounds badass, you know?
Yeah. It's hard because I don't want to use any of my good names until I feel like I have a better grasp on breeding. But at the same time, I
Yeah.
don't want somebody else to use my name. So I'm kind of torn. Like, do I just go ahead and slap it on a horse and hope and pray that it's not awful? Or,
There's no way around that, right? Like
right.
maybe they should have something where you can like put a placeholder name and then you can
Mhm.
rename it within a certain period of time. That would be fun.
I remember some of the guys who've been around for a while said you used to be able to run the Griffies without naming your horse, and then you can name it afterwards.
Ah,
So that'd be kind of cool to see that come back. But I'm sure that creates issues on the back end of the game because I know there was
yeah.
issues with OpenSea there for a while where people would,
Hmm.
even now, they race the horse before they sell it, and then it
Yeah,
doesn't
that was a
update.
huge thing. Hmm.
So
It'll be better when we have our marketplace on Zed. Like once that's there and all the information is more easily accessible, I think it will be better because OpenSea is a little bit clunky,
yeah.
you know. It's just not enough information.
Now I know we're both very pro Zed, but what would it take for you to step away? If Zed made X change or series of changes, would you have to just throw in the towel?
Um, It's a hard question. I mean, I think I need to take little mental health breaks from it every once in a while, just as part of the natural cycle of investing your time in an addiction. And, you know, it's easy to get addicted to a game like this in the beginning. And then I think when you have little setbacks, sometimes it makes me just want to take a step back. Or if I feel like I'm putting in a lot of effort and time and I'm in a situation where I could be making more money or making some money, and then it's just like, I feel like I'm just churning the wheels. Like sometimes I'll
Mm,
just take a little bit of a break. Or if I know a big change is coming, I'll take a break. So I'm not sure about the ELO system. Like I'm I don't have a lot of faith like in the way that the tournaments are run with like everybody running their horses up. and then the whole class system changes and the whole elo system changes. I'm just really hoping that they're not going to screw everybody on where their horse position is versus like the horse's ability. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Because I don't think that it's fair to have everybody have to pay and have this big rush to get down. And um, so, I mean, I think that might some if that gets bungled too badly, I might need to just take a little bit of a break. But I'm hoping that it is a more thoughtful transition when we decide to do that. We need more classes for sure. Like that needs to
Yeah.
happen like ASAP. Um, so don't bungle that, Zed.
I'll make sure I add that to the product portal for you. No bungling.
No bungling.
All right. Well, is there any other projects you're involved in or that you're looking at
Yeah,
or use that
not
only?
really. I mean, I have a pretty extensive job outside of this, so this is really the one thing that I have time for. So I am a little different than a lot of the other people who are in our community, where that are a lot of people are doing many other projects, investing in many other NFTs. This is kind of the one thing that I have the bandwidth to do. So just this for me. How about you, though? What do other ones?
Yeah, I've kind of dabbled quite a bit. So,
Are you doing the Wizards one?
I will definitely be doing the Wizards one.
Mhm.
Um, what Centribus is attempting to do is huge, and if he's able to pull it off, which I believe he will be able to with his background and his resources and the team that he's assembled, it's going to be a game changer for a lot of people. So I want to make sure
Yeah.
I'm there for the ride. So I'll definitely be minting that when that releases. Um, I own a couple chickens, but
Hmm.
that was mainly so for me. NFTs was always about the intellectual property, which is the hot button topic since yesterday, anyways. Because a lot of people are buying projects, waiting for airdrops. But if you truly own the intellectual property, you can create your own Disney, your own Marvel. You can create your own, whatever your favorite cartoon series is with the projects you own. You don't have to wait for somebody else to
Right.
give you permission to do that. Um, so that's always kind of been my path. Even though I enjoy Zed
Okay.
Run, um,
Hmm.
it's the story behind it, and how I play the game is what I'm most fascinated with. So a lot of the
Yeah.
assets I've acquired, I think, fit into the ecosystem. I don't know if you
Hmm.
saw, but I had name badges made up for a lot of my NFTs. So I have my panda, who's my procreation therapist, and he's now running the stud farm. And
Oh,
then
nice.
I have my fame lady squad, who's my race scheduler.
Hmm.
Willie, who's a crypto cannabis club, he runs.
Hmm.
He's just a stable hand. I'm kind of crafting that story for the most part. And then I also minted the Red Village this week, so we'll kind of see how that
Hmm.
goes.
Yeah, I've been looking at that around, but it seems like people are interested.
Yeah, it should be interesting. It's more the style game that I've played historically,
Yeah.
so I don't know. Once again, if I have the bandwidth to take on something else like that, it might be something
Yeah.
that I just hand over to my brothers or something and say, "Here, you've been dragging your feet on NFTs. Play with this one," and and kind of see if I can't get them involved in that way. Because I don't, like I said, I don't know if I have the bandwidth to learn another game.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, this is
it,
already hard enough to stay up on and to be able to like pivot continuously, so I agree.
yeah. All right. Well, I really appreciate you having on. Do you have any final tips or words of wisdom that you've learned being in the community so far?
Um, I think just everyone try to stay positive and keep supporting each other. I think it's the best, most attractive part of this game is just the community of friends that you build of a bunch of really interesting stat nerds who have gotten together and, are trying to do something fun together. So I hope that we just like keep this like good part of the community going. And I appreciate everything that like you are doing and like MJ and like we have so many Centribos. Like there's so many really great people who are very passionate about this and are so willing to share. So I'm just happy to be part of that.
I agree. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome.